we don't make sense a lot of the time. I am a proud American. Let me just be very clear about that.
Hmm.
And I think if you're looking at us from the outside, it would be hard for me to say like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to be a part of that quagmire."
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
Hello, we going international, baby.
You're international right now.
That's right.
It's about
We're,
time.
we're gonna have a couple. I'm also gonna be international in like 3 weeks. So
See, this is good. It was a while since I took my Asia trip off. Like, it's been a while since we recorded international.
that's right.
And it used to happen every 5 weeks. So nice work on
I
you.
know we got to get back to it. Winter time slows down a little bit generally, I would think, but I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing back the winter travel for everybody.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of traveling. I travel all seasons. All right.
Oh, look at
Don't
you,
judge me like that.
non-discriminatory, non-discriminatory.
You know a place I don't go in the winter though, and I'm not going in the winter.
Speak on it.
Greenland.
Ooh, but it's so green up there.
It's not green at all. Have you heard the jokes about how Greenland and Iceland have the wrong names? I think it's hilarious.
I haven't heard the jokes. I've heard the history.
It's turned history into a joke already.
Yeah, there you go.
As you get old, as you get to our experience and wisdom levels, Doogles, we've been around the sun once or twice.
Beach.
You realize that you get to change your opinion a lot.
Oh,
And the Economist magazine did a breakdown of a potential Greenland purchase. This is because of Trump's hogwash about this, that, and the other. That I was actually really compelled by. So I'm gonna pitch
okay.
you. Gonna
Please
pitch you
do.
a purchase of Greenland. Are you
Please
ready?
do. Just come at me. First, one thing. Tell me, are you serious about what you're about to pitch? Do you believe in what you're about to pitch?
Well, let's put it this way. 2 weeks ago, I believed it was laughable. Now I believe negotiation is about finding commonalities that work for all parties. And I believe there is a potential to find a solution that's a win-win.
Okay, I'm gonna come into this with not an open mind, just to be clear.
Yeah,
Let's
come
go.
in hot, please.
Let's go.
All right. Do you know the population of Greenland?
No, speak on it.
56,000 people.
Oh, wow.
56,000 people.
Wow. That's
Okay?
fewer than I
Like,
would have
this is
guessed. Yeah.
a tiny farm town.
Okay.
The entire population is a tiny farm town in Kansas.
56,000.
Okay.
What is it's a big country, right? Isn't it? Like from a landmass perspective?
This cracks me up. It is. I've seen it described as the world's largest island, and I'm like, wait, is Australia not an island? Is Antarctica not like? It's hilarious. I think an island is something that's not formally a continent, or maybe anyway, decent landmass, right?
Okay. Yeah.
They did some calculations, and they think, based on GDP and like almost just kind of cash flows of tax rates, plus some basically paying for some natural resources that are there, that a
Okay.
purchase price might be around $50 billion.
All right.
What that does off the top, Douglas, is it makes everyone in the country a millionaire.
Okay.
Those
Hold on.
56,000 people
Hold
are
on.
all
Hold on.
immediately
Hold
a
on.
millionaire. Yeah.
Are we assuming, if you assume that Greenland's a corporation, we're assuming that the citizens of Greenland own a part of whatever the purchase price would be?
I'm not going to go deep into the details, but Greenland is actually like a territory of Denmark. But Denmark has kind of
Mhm.
told them that if they want to declare independence, they can. And so the Economist takes the tilt that this would effectively go to a vote of the 56,000 people. And the vote would say, do you want to become an American territory? Yes, no. And here's $1 million each. It'd say something like that.
I just, for some reason, I don't believe that. Okay, so let's say Trump becomes president. It's going to happen right in a few days here.
Mhm.
If someone came and bought the United States, I don't think I would see a dime of what came from that.
That's a much different scenario. Absolutely, much different. That's why 56,000 people matters so much.
Okay,
honestly.
okay, I get it. I get
It's
it.
why
Yep.
50, and it's why a country that appears to have vast natural resources that no one can access because it's so close to the Arctic Circle that it's frozen all the time. So, like, this is not your prime real estate. All right.
Okay,
We're not
all right.
talking about Hawaii.
Okay.
here.
All right, so we're just doing math. 50 billion, 56,000. Okay, I got that. Yep.
50 billion. Here's the catch, though. 50 billion is 1/12 of our annual defense spending. And the reason everyone's excited about Greenland right now is two reasons.
Okay.
One, vast resources, 43 of the 50 most critical resources deemed by the US. Again, can you access that currently? Probably not. But if the world gets much warmer, potentially. And two, security, because of the potential Northwest Passageway that opens up. That's like a critical path for transport and security across the world, right?
Yeah, I get that.
You're forecasting out there 30, 40, 50 years. It's just not nearly as crazy as I thought. We spend 1/12 of the defense budget, which is kind of nothing. And not only do you get the potential strategic national security that comes with it, but you also get all those resources.
Okay, hold on.
To me, it's like
hold on. No. The reason, personally, I can't speak to whatever was in your cloudy mentals. The reason that I was giving like a what, face and exclamation of this wasn't because it wouldn't make sense for the US to have Greenland as a territory. That would make a lot if Greenland was a part of the US just conceptually, that'd make perfect sense. It's because buying a people is a big deal and it's flippantly being thrown around.
No.
I mean, yeah, it'd be great for us to have Germany. Like that would be why it's better to have Germany than not have Germany.
You're lost here, man. You're lost. This is why 56,000 people matter so much. You're buying a small town in Kansas. You're not buying Germany. you're buying a territory potentially. And this is all hypothetical. I hope everyone knows. You're buying a territory that effectively no one wants and no one has ever wanted in the history of the world.
Oh, whoa, wow.
I'm sorry, that's strong.
The Danish,
there's
the
a
Danish
reason only
good with it.
56,000 people live there.
The Danish seems good with it.
The Danish seems so good with it that they said if you want to declare independence, go for it.
Is that not what the
really
British
care.
did?
It won't really bother us. Yeah, we know you have some resources that they're impossible to get to.
Yeah,
go have at that.
So what you're saying is there's strategic, from a military and general trade perspective, strategic reasons why having any country having occupation of Greenland would make sense. There are resources that if you can get to them are quite valuable. And so there's a price for the US that would probably make sense. And because it's 56,000 people, who cares?
There might be a price for the citizenry that also makes sense. And we're not talking about like, I don't know, some third world country buying you that has no benefits. Like most countries in the world would be happy to join the US.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't say most. A lot of countries in the world would be like, oh yeah, that's cool.
We don't make sense a lot of the time. I am a proud American. Let me just be very clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're looking at us from the outside, it would be hard for me to say like, oh yeah, I'd love to be a part of that quagmire.
Very, very true. There's two last points. We'll move on. One, I hope this happens because I think it's hilarious. And two, if this happens and everyone in Greenland was given $1 million check, what would be hilarious is to see them realize in like a year that what matters in the human brain is relative wealth. Because when everyone becomes a millionaire at the same time in the same country, all that happens is your prices get inflated massively because you're all still competing for the same goods. So the only way $1 million check really makes sense is if they spend that money outside of Greenland, if everyone else gets the same check at the same time. I think that'd be hilarious. But two, I'm an investor at heart. And I think this use of potential defense spending is very interesting to me because I think over the course of 200 years, like there could be a nice return there in a way that I don't think all of our defense spending currently gets a nice ROI. I think that's what intrigues me most about it.
So you think this is a Doge-worthy spending of the U.S. budget?
Not at all. You're taking this way too seriously. I mean, you have to be chuckling underneath, right?
I think if it weren't named in the same conversation as our right to Panama and the Gulf of America.
Yes, it's laughable. I agree.
No, I do. I recently read a history of World War II. And from that, understood, at least from the explanation there, the importance of the strategic location of Greenland. I do. It's an important landmass. If from a access to Europe perspective,
Mhm.
there's a lot of, if I put everything else, any ideology aside, there is a lot of advantage to having for the U.S. to be able to have a military presence there. And if the resource thing like comes to fruition, yeah, awesome. If we got like ground thawing science, if that's a thing, I'm not sure if that's a field of study for anyone. If it's
Yeah, we
not,
might
it
have
seems
it.
to be.
Yeah, it's called fossil fuels. Yeah, got it.
It's
It's been around for a
Brad.
long time. We're on top of it.
Oh, fair enough. Oh, you're all right. You ready to switch gears?
Yeah.
I'll do a quick hit. I got a couple quick hits here. Here's one I want to start with. This was a very short blog post on alanpike.com that I think you don't need a lot of words to say important stuff. It's called An Unreasonable Amount of Time. That's the name of the post. We'll have it on the Substack on Monday, skippydoogles.substack.com. So it starts out by talking about this, Penn and Teller, they do the magician stuff. So it talks about the one trick that Teller performed, at least allegedly, but why the heck not? This seems like something Teller would do. And the way it would work was Teller says, pick a card, any card you pick, that whole thing. You pick a card, and this is not your usual, oh, is this your card? Is this your card? It's not that. No, that's not Teller. What Teller does is says, okay, you picked your card, come with me. Then Teller goes to a park. Teller inspires you. I don't know how exactly that happens, but inspires you to dig a hole. You dig a hole. In that hole is a box. You open that box, and your card that you picked is inside the box. This is the magic trick. Now, why is this magic trick in a post called An Unreasonable Amount of Time? It's because of this. It's because the way that the trick works is that months before this trick happens, Teller puts a card in a box, buries it in the park, then allows the grass enough time for the grass to grow over that box, then comes and does the trick. And so it seems like complete magic. That is why it's a magic trick. Okay, I'm going to pause before I get to the point.
You better get to the point quick. Falling asleep over here.
Man, why do you gonna bring Greenland and then start talking smack? Okay, so here's the point. There's so many things that oftentimes feel like magic. And really what it is that someone spent an unreasonable amount of time, either in preparation, honing a skill, or the reason I'm bringing it up on this here podcast is because of patience and just general trust in a system. And I think that that's really important because we talk about, and this is a long-standing thing that we'll talk about a lot, long-standing thing in investing. We talk about compounding a lot and the power of it. And when something compounds a lot over time, it's like we discussed with the janitor that's wealthy or the home cleaner that becomes wealthy or whatever it might be. And what they did was they performed magic by doing something simple and waiting. And I think that that's such an important point. And this piece like hit me with it. I'm going to say one quote from it. And I've already paraphrased this a little bit. Sometimes magic is just someone spending more time on something than anyone else might reasonably expect. I like the use of the word reasonably in here because with the human psyche, when you get past reasonableness, I think that's the point where someone might give up or be like, that's too complicated. So might reasonably expect. Simple piece, it's super short, and I think it's powerful.
The magic that comes from investing could be something as simple as this. These numbers are directionally correct. Put away $5,000 for 12 years, have that grow at average rates and pay a decent dividend. And on your 12th year, those funds spit off $5,000 for you. So all of a sudden, $5,000 appeared out of thin air. It's magic, but you just worked hard and put money aside for 12 years. Like
that's it.
And you know what happens on year 13 through year 30? You get more than $5,000 for free. Like it's huge.
It's exactly right. And where the magic can be felt is if I'll take your exact scenario, and let's say there are two colleagues, they're doing same job, making the same amount of money, getting the same raises over that whole period of time. To that second colleague who didn't do what you just said, you having the balance that you have spitting out 5K will feel like magic because they're like, we've been doing the same thing for 12 years, the two of us. It feels like magic. Short, powerful, to the point. Again, it'll be on the Substack.
It is magic. I want to reach into my fishbowl and I want to talk science. This is pretty complex. So I want you to hold my hand along the way.
Okay. Right? Is this about ground thawing technology?
No, this is about the Surgeon General's warning about drinking and
Okay.
cancer related stuff.
Oh, there we
And
go.
you and I 3 weeks ago said, this is super confusing to me. One, why did no one ever tell me this? And two, what is the severity of this? Is
Mhm.
drinking cigarettes? Is drinking a soda? Like that?
Yeah.
It was completely unquantified. So what the Economist did, what the Atlantic did, what the Wall Street Journal, what the New York Times all did this week is had breakdowns to try and make sense of this. I think it's very clear that the Surgeon General did this poorly because this is all anyone writes about right now. I read all those pieces. My favorite is from Derek Thompson, but the piece in The Economist was also very good. So
Okay.
we are going to go to Science Land, and we're going to explain the past and why there was such confusion around this issue. And then we're going to talk about the future. Are you ready?
Oh, born as such.
When it comes to drinking historically, like scientific studies that happened in the 80s and 90s found what's called a J curve for longevity risk. Basically, the people that don't drink at all did not live as long as the people that had one or two drinks in moderation, maybe one or two times a week, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the best mortality was the moderate drinkers. And then as you drink in excess, it's bad for everybody. Crystal clear. That's been crystal clear since the beginning of time.
Yep.
All the studies have shown if you consume way too much alcohol over a long period of time, it is really, really bad for you. So this is where this hypothesis in the 90s comes from that says, hey, maybe a glass of wine with dinner is actually a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the studies clearly showed, and they still show this today, that these really moderate drinkers actually live longer than the people that don't drink at all. Make sense?
Yep. Makes perfect sense.
All right. What happened is, I almost want to say complex adaptive system, Doogles. What happened is the world is super complex.
Yep.
This is where I want to bring it back to investing. What's actually going on with the people who don't drink at all is there's usually some reason for that, because drinking is a social lubricant in this country and it happens at happy hours and stuff. So the people that don't drink at all are sometimes really obese. Sometimes they've already been an alcoholic and they're recovering from that. Sometimes they have diabetes. Sometimes they're really, really poor, which has other impacts on mortality.
Yep.
And so the reason that group actually doesn't live as long has nothing to do with the amount of alcohol they consumed. But the scientific studies in the 80s and 90s misunderstood that, misclassified that, and came to the wrong conclusions. You still with me?
Yep. It's the classic. It happens in economics all the time. The classic, all else being equal, ceteris paribus. And then when you actually look under the hood, all else is not equal. And so therefore your outcomes, you need to look at a different way.
So what's happened in the last 5 or 10 years as it relates to alcohol consumption is they've adjusted for those and said, oh, you know what? Even one drink once a week is worse than zero drinks ever if you have the same income and the same health outcomes and all these other things. That makes perfect sense.
Yep.
But here's where I personally feel like they simplified and forgot how complex the adaptive system is, right?
Yep.
The Surgeon General only a year ago came out and said that loneliness is a crisis in this country, and that loneliness is one of the most damaging things. Loneliness, which leads to depression, which actually leads to shorter lifespan. We've talked about the harms of sugar, and RFK Jr. is on the kick about all the additives in our food. So we know this is very, very complex. Derek Thompson has a great quote as part of his article that I thought was good. I won't read it all, but the gist of it is you have to look at absolute and relative risks. So he uses a swimming pool as an example, right? The risk of having a swimming pool, the dying related to a swimming pool, is very minute. It increases exponentially if you put a swimming pool in your backyard. But the relative risk associated with that swimming pool is still very, very minute. In most cases, alcohol consumption is somewhat similar. And I'll give one specific example here. You can say that it can be concluded that drinking a moderate amount of alcohol can increase someone's odds of getting mouth cancer by 40%. But what that actually means is their lifetime absolute risk of developing mouth cancer is less than 1%. And if they drink occasionally, their chance of getting mouth cancer might be around 1.3%. Still very, very small in the grand scheme of things. So I covered a lot of ground there. I'm going to pause, make sure I connected all the dots because there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So what you're saying is if you look at the absolute and relative, just like you stated, If the absolute chance of something happening is low, like in your swimming pool example or in this mouth cancer example, increasing that absolute value by 40% can still be quite low, but sounds dramatic.
It can sound dramatic, yes. And that varies across the board. Where I think, and listen, I'm not defending alcohol consumption. I think it's really bad for a lot of people. But I think the nuance, I think the Surgeon General completely missed the nuance here. And I think it's very possible that you could say, given his two recent warnings, that occasionally using alcohol as a social lubricant to be less lonely might offset the benefits
Oh, wow.
of the loneliness epidemic. That is the last thing you said that was really bad. And that's just one example, because I think it's so complex, right?
Yeah.
You have to look at the totality of one thing. Where Derek Thompson in the Atlantic goes is, hey, somebody give me a real number. And he got expert to say, probably for every drink you have, you lose 5 minutes of your life. And there's some math behind it. You guys can read the article. But he got a similar expert to say, for every 1 minute of exercise, you probably add 5 minutes to your life. And then you could do a similar thing with loneliness. So my whole point here is not really about alcohol.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's about investing, but it's about everything else. Look at the totality of all these decisions and make sure that things happen in moderation and there's equal parts good, or hopefully more good than bad, and then bring it all together. But a person that exercises 30 minutes a day and has 2 drinks a week, based on my reading of this science, has nothing to worry about, especially if that drink comes in a social environment where they're like building and forging relationships, which are so good for your long-term health. There's just a lot of factors here that I think got missed in the way this was rolled out.
Complexity. What it makes me think about, to go back to the absolute relative thing, let me just give you, to bring it full to investing, to make sure I understand. If I look at my chance of a massive positive return over the long term, investing in Bitcoin, and take that absolute number, and then say, and if I leverage myself completely in that investment in Bitcoin, I can increase that return by 40%. It's important to know that the absolute percentage was 0 to start with.
Well, it'd have to be like 0.001.
Okay, yes.
Oh, you over there throwing shade at Bitcoin. Look at you. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, there we go.
No, honestly, I think this is fascinating. I thought about it a lot this week. I just want to make sure I connected all the dots. The J-curve piece and how we misinterpreted the science in the 80s and 90s is fascinating. And then all the complexities around this is just one piece of like your health journey is so fascinating to me. You could do this with any decision. You can say flying has a chance of dying, so I'm never going to fly. Driving has a chance, but you don't make decisions like that. But somehow our health experts, well, this specific recommendation came across lacking that nuance to me. And I don't know if that's on my end or if it's on the Surgeon General's end, but I just feel like it's so much more complex than it was presented to be.
Yeah, because it was given, or maybe one reason, maybe I shouldn't say because so strongly, it was given with such an absolutist tone without any nuance that comes along with it, which I think was the purpose. Mm-hmm. But if you see anything that's put in that light, it doesn't take into account all the other stuff that isn't, to go back to ceteris paribus, that isn't all else is equal. Like it takes everything else away from it. And to your point, if you look at anything in that light, you're going to miss the point. Whatever the point is, you're going to miss the forest.
Yes.
I get that.
Well, yeah, there's completely different. There's really hard drugs. There's nicotine. There's sugary beverages. Like it just was not placed in there was no classification of like, this is really, like, heroin is really, really bad. Nicotine is really bad. It
that's
lacked that nuance.
That's right. Yeah, I think the comparison point is an important one, just for people to generally understand. But thank you.
I honestly still don't know. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, no, just thank you for doing a deeper dive. Appreciate it.
I still don't know like how it compares to excess consumption of sugary beverages.
Yeah.
Or ultra processed foods, or all these other things that are said to be terrible for us in a way that lacks nuance as well.
Yeah. Or living in Greenland.
We can pull out the lifespan there, but it's a small sample size,
That's
Doogles.
true. That is true. That's very true. All right. I'm going to reach into the fishbowl to pull out two pieces, and they are not meant to be related. But when I read these two pieces, in my mind, they were. So you got to join me for this journey.
I mean, this is what you always do. You're always like, oh, the color green is linked to my vacation to California.
Don't take the punchline away. Okay, let the people get there on their own. The first piece I'm going to talk about is called minimum levels of stress. Minimum levels of stress is in the collab fund, Morgan Housel's ish. And what this says at a high level, and then I'll give you a couple quotes from it. At a high level, what this piece is about is it's saying we in America have it pretty good, relatively speaking, right now. We got it pretty good, especially if you look historically, even in this country. And when you have it pretty good, it's easy for you to get lost in some of the minutia of what's bad, and everything starts to feel more painful than it is. That's the high level. My words, not Morgan's. Now I'll give you a couple Morgan's words. As the world improves, our threshold for complaining drops. I'm going to give you an example he does not give in here. It's like in our world, you go to your local burger restaurant. You didn't want the tomato. You said no tomato. Your burger comes with tomatoes and your whole day is shot.
Yep.
You could be in a country where there is no burger, but we're used to being able to get food whenever we want. You click that little carrot app. You say, deliver me the groceries. If the groceries are 20 minutes late, you are livid, not thinking about
You
the
are.
fact
No,
that
I'm not. I'm cool.
no,
with it,
you are livid, not thinking about the fact that wow, I could click on an app and order food. Like it's that's what he's saying there.
my favorite joke relating to this is people complaining about expenses on DoorDash. You'll see it on social media where someone like takes a screenshot and goes like, "My burger just cost $35 or whatever." And first of all, it's the world's most ridiculous order that's super expensive. But the joke that comes with it is always like, "You're complaining that your personal burger taxi is expensive." Like it's a personal burger taxi. It should be expensive. It's amazing that you even have access to a personal burger taxi.
Personal burger taxi. Oh, it's classic. I love it. Exactly. That's the point. All right, here's another one. In the absence of big problems, people shift their worries to smaller ones. In the absence of small problems, they focus on petty or even imaginary ones. He's saying this is in the context of when things are pretty comfortable. They don't have to be wonderful. Like even in the piece, he's not like there aren't things to fix and it's not like there aren't problems. He just goes when everything is generally relatively comfortable, that this is true.
Yes.
Things previously considered normal are redefined as risks. Less severe instances of risk are recast as major risks. He's talking about life in general here. Relate this to so many things that we've discussed over the last 4 years in the markets as well. We can even we don't have to go last 4 years. What we've talked about in the last 12 months, maybe even the last 6 months about interest rates in general. Mm-hmm. And I can probably change one word or two in here. Rates that are previously considered normal are redefined as risks. Less severe rate changes are recast as major risks.
The world is still losing their mind that mortgage rates are above 7% when historically that's like average.
Yeah.
It's just not average in the recent past.
You sent me something, I don't think we're going to talk about it today, but you sent me something recently that was looking at PE multiples in 1990 versus today for different industries. Mm-hmm. And clicking through that a bit and diving in, I saw that in 1990, I think it was the 10-year treasury was like 9%. So just everyone take that into consideration right now. That was the treasury, the risk-free rate in 1990.
Take me back. I want to go.
Oh,
please.
Yeah. I tried to jump into the data just to see if it would if it would translate. It did not. It did not. Okay. So that's the first piece, okay? Minimum levels of stress. So take that as some context. And I have this piece. I read this piece first. I have this piece sitting in my brain. I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Let me sit on that. Let me digest that." And then I read this other piece. This other piece is at charleshughesmith.blogspot.com.
That's right. He said blogspot, people. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. That is exactly right. This piece is called "I Quit: The Tsunami of Burnout Few See." In this piece, he's talking about how there's this collective burnout that's happening, an epidemic of burnout of people that are happening. The I Quit piece comes from people that are burnt out at work, and what they're being told is like work harder, and they're burning out. They just can't do anything. People are like, go recharge, take a vacation, and even a vacation is too hard. It takes too much work for folks to do. And he's saying, how can we, in this time of burnout, how do we just ignore the fact that there are people that they can't recharge like that. They can't do that extra bit of work. And he talks about the village of happy people and happy stories in the village of happy people. And he's like, we're saying everything's going to be better. It's going to be okay. We spin all these things and people are burning out. One piece, and then I'll give you why I connect these two things. One piece of this that I dug into a little further is he has this graph of, I guess it's self-reported, folks that are self-reported have a disability that the Fed puts out. I went and looked at the raw data just to make sure that, because this graph surprised me. So I went and looked at the raw data. It only goes back to 2010. I wish this went back further because I'm curious what it looked like before then, but we have what we have. In 2010 to today, the change in people in the civilian labor force with a disability 16 years and over, that is the graph from the Federal Reserve that I'm looking at. The change in people has gone up by about 40 to 45%. That is wild. And I say from 2010, but it went up and down between 2010 and 2020. And it's really since 2020, in the last 4 to 5 years, the change in folks that as a government we recognize as having a disability through this data is quite massive. So when I read these two pieces, I'm going to use the word quagmire again, which is what I called the US a while ago. But the conundrum that was sitting in my head is I was like, okay, so we're at a time where we've discussed in a few different ways where folks maybe are a bit too complacent or too comfortable, and therefore it's easier to get, I'll call it hurt. It's easier for us to feel hurt. It's easier for us to think that things are risky when historically they would not have been viewed as risky. And there are more and more people burning out. Those two things together are not a good combination.
I feel like you're making an argument that has made its rounds in the last 12 months that people, and it usually gets cast on the youth, aren't tough enough today.
I'm not saying that exactly. But
Okay.
I see. It's like it's related to that, but it's a little bit, maybe a little bit more nuanced. Is the reason I'm putting these two things together is because I think that the burnout that this describes, I don't look at this burnout and be like, people actually aren't burnt out, like, which is what I would put in the not tough enough. I think people are, like, I think the feeling is real, and I think that a reason that that feeling is real is because it has been a while in the country since, as a whole, this does not go to the individual because every individual has different, they're in different places, have different backgrounds and experiences, et cetera. But as a whole, we haven't had to be uncomfortable, like relatively uncomfortable in a while. I bet you if we go to, I'm just picking a place here, if we go into Ukraine and give them the work week that someone here has and are like, are you burnt out? They'd go, nah, I'll do this again next week.
Okay.
Like, if I could trade my situation for this, I'll go ahead and do this. But that's just like that's not who we are. We can click on the Carrot app and get our personal burger taxi.
I
We
mean,
can,
to me, this is just all the hedonic treadmill. Like, and
yeah, it's
I,
related.
I hate to say this. I hope I don't regret saying this. This is inarticulate, but it's kind of like, yeah, I'm ready for a recession. If that's what you're saying here, Doogles, like, yeah,
I didn't say that exactly,
kind of,
but
but it's kind of what you're saying. Things have been, yeah, COVID brought a lot of challenges, but generally, economically, things have been great for since 2009.
relatively speaking, and not for
Yeah.
everyone, but I'm saying relatively speaking and in aggregate, yes.
True. Yes, and that's very fair because the way real estate. All right, let's go there. There's how do we do this? With the TikTok ban, there's been some belly aching. Um, and it's the usual stuff about, I guess I don't know if this is believable or not, but what I've seen is the usual stuff about this is horrible, especially in the creator community. Like, I still can't afford to buy a house, and now you're taking away my livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
And I always kind of go, I hope, again, I hope this doesn't come across right, but like, do you know how affordable a house in like Kansas or Nebraska is? You do not have to live in New York City or
Yeah.
San Francisco or Austin, Texas. But it doesn't feel like that thought is widely held.
Yeah.
Am I
And
being
we've
insensitive here? I mean,
probably, but I think that it's, but I don't think that it's false. And I do think that it's much harder for people now with social media because humans are so ingrained in comparison. It's so hard for us not to compare. And when we are constantly in a state where folks are creating algorithms in order to compare you to other things in life, stuff that you don't have, places that you aren't, what you're not doing, friends you don't have, like all of that is constantly bombarding folks. I think it becomes harder for people, not impossible, but I think it's harder for people to say, like, actually, the thing that I, as an agent of my life, would prefer is just to live in Omaha and
yeah.
not have to worry about everything else. But you're getting hit in the face with the people with their Gucci, the people in New York. That's it's harder. Like, we've made it harder.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears slightly, if that's okay, and
Yeah,
pull out
yeah,
my
yeah.
last item from the fishbowl.
Go for it.
Have you heard this stat? Have you heard that uh, Mississippi, which is the poorest state in the U.S., is now richer on a per capita basis than the United Kingdom or Japan?
Yes. Yep, I've seen that.
Okay. Robin Rigglesworth in the Financial Times breaks this down and comes to the conclusion that the U.S. dollar is grossly overvalued. He argues that it's 22% overvalued compared to G10 currencies. I wholeheartedly endorse this, and I just want to talk about a few points.
You endorse the analysis or endorse the overvaluation?
The overvaluation, that hypothesis, I think is right.
Okay.
So in the past year, some world currencies compared to the US have done this. The Indian rupee is down 3%. The euro is down 6%. The Swiss franc is down 9%. The New Zealand dollar is down basically 11%. The Russian currency is down 21%. South Korea is down 12%. Pretty much across the board. The US dollar is outperformed all over.
What is the
currencies.
Danish krone for our Greenland folks?
I unfortunately do not have it on this chart.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, all right. We're not sure how Greenland's done. Keep going.
But he goes through point by point. I just think you should read it because I'm not going to go point by point, and says, no, that's actually not what's happening. The US dollar is just overvalued right now. I will tell you, I was just in Japan. I dare anyone to stand at Tokyo Station and tell me that that place is poorer on a per capita basis than anywhere in Mississippi. I absolutely dare you to do it. It's just fundamentally not true.
Wow. That's a call to action.
Means you need to get on a plane. The reason this is so fascinating to me is because I own a lot of international stocks.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
this has been driving that story for the past 12 to 24 months too. It almost doesn't matter what's happening, what your performance in the local currency is, because that is being eroded so much by the outperformance of the US dollar. And what we've done, whether you call it a soft landing or anything else, compared to your average economy in the world, is truly remarkable. The US economy appears to be much stronger than your average European economy, your average Asian economy, your average South American economy. But what we've also done is provided more stimulus than pretty much any other economy on earth, potentially rode into a tech bubble with the valuations we've talked about. And all those things could have really positive effects in the short term, but I am personally not convinced that they'll have really positive effects for the dollar strength in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say long term here, you just mean 5+ years or something? Or like, I know it's not a specific amount of time.
I was thinking more 10, but
more 10, yeah.
certainly if you if you spend more money, increase deficits and interest rates go up, which
Ooh, you're playing with
are
fire with that last
uniquely
one.
American things right now. Now, some of the
Yeah.
other Western economies have done similar things,
Yep.
but that can be really good in the short term. And it's hard to find anyone that argue that that's really good in the long term. I don't know that I can
I
find
know.
someone.
You're exactly right. The trick here, trick might not be the right word, but I'll say it again. The trick here is that everyone will say, yeah, that's not good in the long term. When the long term starts, let me know so I can get out. But in the meantime,
I hold my elected office in Congress for the short term there, Doogles.
yeah,
So
yes, no, yeah, exactly. I looked at this and I was like, I need to buy me some more of that Brazil. Like that is what my lips was watery. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not telling anyone to do
basically the
that, by the
same on
way.
my end. Yeah,
But
basically the same. Because if this reverses, well, yeah, I didn't want to turn this into a pitch to buy Brazilian stocks, but you can imagine a situation where stocks in some country that's not the US are trading at multiples that are like 5 times cheaper, maybe more, maybe 8 times cheaper.
that's right.
And then this reverses and the returns get really, really juicy, really, really quick. That's called mean reversion, friends. Welcome to my TED Talk. There we go.
So this is what I'm about to say is ridiculous. But in 2027, which is when the next women's FIFA World Cup is, it's going to be in Brazil. And I'm like, should I buy all my currency now?
Uh, that's hilarious.
Oh man. Yeah. That's a good one. I think that's a good note to close out on.
All right. We grabbed a couple new subscribers this week. We love folks that support the show. Thank you so much. It helps behind the scenes. You can do that. Or skippydoogles.supercast.com. All things related to the show, skippydoogles.com. Hit us with some listener mail, which is skippydoogles@gmail.com. And we'll break that down for you too.
Appreciate y'all.
All right. See ya.